How's it going, everybody? And welcome back to your favorite weekly horoscope, this time for April 26th through May 2nd of 2021. Thank you guys so much for being here, liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you. Very excited you guys can be here with me this week. I have tried to shoot this weekly horoscope multiple times tonight, and I am struggling with it only because this is I was talking about the full moon in Scorpio there for a minute, and it's pretty intense, so I want to get to that. But before we start, I just want to also say, in case you guys didn't see the announcement, my Patreon is now live. If you guys want to support the creation of my weekly horoscopes, monthly horoscopes, any extra content that I'm going to be able to start doing now that I have a Patreon, as well as if you want to have access to early content, as well as be able to support the show, become a producer of the Delineation, which, by the way, if you didn't watch my podcast, watch my podcast. I got a lot of really good feedback. I was really excited about it, so thank you to everyone who checked it out, watched, became a patron to support it. I'm really excited for future episodes, which one should be coming out here. I don't know if I'm going to do it monthly or bi-monthly, but anyway, if you become a patron and you support the podcast, you'll be able to get early access to this weekly horoscope like all the patrons are watching right now early. And as well, I'll be posting a Mercury retrograde video for all of my patrons this week as well, and it won't be coming out until a little bit later for everyone else. So if you want to get early access to that, become a patron at Cam White or patreon.com/Cam White Astro. Anyway, enough of that. We have to talk about the astrology. Let's go ahead and start with this week. So, again, how I really kind of want to start this is the fact that we start Monday off. You will wake up on Monday morning with the moon in Libra trining Jupiter. And this isn't to say that it's just going to start off nice, as if that means it's going to end badly, but it's going to start off really good. I think this moon in Libra applying to Jupiter, there's this coming to consensus. This is, being able to agree, being able to negotiate, settle on things. The moon's going to square Pluto at the same time too. So there's kind of like a tension there where it's kind of like, wanting to create resolution over, a lot of conflict. But that's one thing. The moon's going to then go into Scorpio though, where a few things are going on. Of course, it's the full moon in Scorpio. This now begins. The moon is going into its sign of fall. The moon is going into a Mars ruled sign. Mars and the moon are in mutual reception. Mars is a moon sign, moon's a Mars sign. Mars, moon, moon, Mars. Moon, Mars, Mars, moon. Anyway, the full moon in Scorpio happens every single year, right? So it's kind of always expected, but let's talk about what the full moon does. And I'm a broken record with this. It's the moon's job is to literally light up the night. Like, it's literally to light up what we don't always see. So the full moon is when things become a lot more clear, a lot more visible. Things are just happening. The energy's going on. I was just watching this because YouTube and the stupid algorithm that just put stuff in my face. I was watching like vets, and this vet was like taking porcupine things out of a dog's nose. And like he got two dogs in with porcupine things. He's like, it's not even a full moon. What's going on? And I thought that was really funny. But full moon, a lot is activated, right? But the moon's in Scorpio. This is a full moon in Scorpio. The moon's in fall in Scorpio. So the moon doesn't like being here. So of course this is illumination, but in something that is uncomfortable. We're bringing up something that we didn't see before. It's kind of like, we're getting the results back. We're opening the envelope. The doctor's coming back in the room type energy. The moon in Scorpio is kind of like, hey, we need to bring something to illumination. And this is also like when the sun illuminates something, right? Like the sun is like, dude, like that's that light bulb in your face. We're looking at it exposed. The moon is kind of like, hey, we got to bring this up. We got to talk about this. So and of course, sign of fall. This is something uncomfortable. This is something hidden. This is something underneath the surface. This is something at the core, the depth of the issue. I think that it's going to come to a surprise when you talk about the moon. You can't talk about the moon transiting Scorpio and not talk about fear. But with the moon going into Scorpio, this is kind of highlighting fear. This is highlighting a lot of what we don't know, what we haven't seen. And the thing is, though, and this is where, the moon's going to go into Scorpio, right, where the full moon begins, but then it's going to start to trine Mars. Now, Mars in Cancer is something that I really like to, I really talk about with Mars in Cancer is like emotional impulsiveness, like taking action, like guilt, being really easy, like, the guilt trip, taking action on that, feeling very guilty from your actions. Mars in Cancer, Mars, Mars is like acting on that impulsive, emotional, reaction rather than that response. Something that I was kind of struggling talking about on the last couple of takes I tried to record this. Mars, you got to think of a dignified Mars. What does that look like, right? Mars is, like taking action at the right time, striking at the right moment, not flinching. Like you think of a boxer, you think of a fighter that, like, when you watch them and you can just see that they know what they're doing. They're not just enraging, right? They're just going after it. I think of Mars in Capricorn, right? Like, there's a reason why Mars is dignified in Capricorn. There's or exalted in Capricorn, I should say. But make a plan, stick to the plan. Mars in Scorpio is the same thing. It's like when you give it your all, you can't give up. And Mars in Aries is like, if you just got the energy, you'll figure it out type shit. But Mars in Cancer is, like I talked last week, sometimes your best offense is a good defense. Sometimes you got to know when to push back. Sometimes you got to know when to pull back. And you don't find out when to pull back. You don't find out that to not touch the stove when it's on fire until you touch the stove. That's the problem with this type of stuff. Is like, yeah, Mars in Cancer is like, oh, we should be defensiveness, but you don't just wake up one day, you're like, you know what, maybe I should change. Who the fuck has ever done that? We all say that we're gonna change, and we don't. But we don't wake up and actually do it, right? It's from one, it's a progress. It's a journey. But Mars in Cancer, it's something happens that initiates that. There's something that goes down that makes you feel uncomfortable. Now, when you talk about the moon, when you talk about the moon going into Scorpio, trining the Mars in Cancer. Now, this is a harmonious aspect, but misery loves company. So when you talk about, see, this is the thing, like, and I'm probably gonna make a podcast episode about this. Like, we have to completely take away our idea. Sometimes I want to curse Astro Software for making the lines blue for good and the red lines bad. Excuse me, because that's not always the case. I talk a lot about how Mars can be very beneficial. Saturn can be very beneficial. Trines, this isn't to say that it's bad, but again, misery loves company. This is the moon in Scorpio is being like, the Mars in Cancer is like, oh my God, should I do this? And the moon's in Scorpio is like, yes, you should do this. Like, Mars in Cancer is like, kind of questioning some things, and the moon in Scorpio is like very hypochondriac, like very like, yes, like everything's out to get you, everything's there to do. And Mars in Cancer, this is kind of like one of those moments of manipulation almost, in a sense, where the moon trining Mars is like, if you're not careful, it's going to be really easy to make sudden decisions. I mean, this is also on top of Uranus too, based out of this fear. So you really got to check yourself in this, because it's just going to be in your face, it's just going to be there. But there's another page to this, right? This is a full moon in Scorpio. This is we're finally looking under the hood. It's time to go get that oil change that you've been neglecting for a little while. And you can't be surprised when the mechanic comes. Like, if you haven't changed your oil in 20,000, 30,000 miles, like some psychopath, you can't go into the mechanic thinking that it's not going to be bad. That'd be bad if he was like, oh, it's good. I'd be like, what? Like, I haven't changed the oil. But the moon, this is highlighting what the issues are. And Mars is in Cancer, right? We don't always, like, the best way to fight something, again, is sometimes to recluse back a little bit. Like, sometimes it's a good defense. Like, it's not always about, like, what can you do, but what should you not do almost? Like, that's almost the better way. I mean, especially with Mars too being a malefic. But this full moon in Scorpio, I think, is really, like, for one, trining Mars. I know I'm 10 minutes still talking about Monday, but this is kind of a big deal. I really look at this as this is kind of like you're going to really be trusting your intuition on where to take action. You're really not going to know what step to take. You're going to feel insecure. You're going to feel like every action you take is wrong either way. That's the hard part about this. Like, there's no winning here. Now, don't get me wrong. Mercury and Venus are still in Taurus here, making their nice conjunction. They're separated from Saturn. They're coming towards Jupiter. We're going to have that at the end of the week. It's not like this is all bad, but this is highlighting, look at where Scorpio rules in your chart. This is also what Mars rules, and this part of your chart isn't really, all that good as it usually is, I guess that you could say at that moment. This full moon's very much like, what should you be doing, and what should you not be doing, and also it's going to give you a reaction. But this is one of those things. This is kind of like one of those sayings I love. It's like, what separates the men from the boys. It's kind of like, are you going to act out of fear? Or are you going to step up to the plate in that moment and, do what you got to do? And this is one of those things where doing what you got to do isn't easy all the time, right? Like, sometimes doing what you got to do means surrendering. Sometimes doing what you got to do is not fighting that fight. Sometimes doing what you got to do is also like seeing where you're wrong. Like, it's like handling business, like people, the whole corporatizing everyone, like having to be like the hustle culture, I guess you could say. Like, when you talk about like handling your business, like it's about like doing what you should, like you can't, it's the stuff that you keep neglecting, that you keep hiding. It's like, no, that's what you got to be handling. That's what you got to be, covering. And I think this full moon in Scorpio is kind of like, again, Scorpio's about what's hidden. Scorpio's about what's underneath the surface, what we don't see. And now that we see it, once you see the truth, you have to act on it, right? It's kind of like, well, yeah, once you see the truth, you have to act on it. I don't know what else to say besides that. Anyway, I really got to keep going on because I could really talk all day fucking long about this full moon in Scorpio. Anyway, I guess my closing, Jerry's final thoughts on this full moon in Scorpio on Monday is just kind of like, do what you can, do your best, do not react. That's the best situation. But what you see is what you see. You can't deny that. Like, I was just watching this documentary about I can't believe I'm going to mess this up. I would feel very bad if I mess this up, so I have to Google this real quick. I was just watching this about the German camp in the one that started with a D. Oh my gosh, hold on. I have to literally like look this up right now. Dutch? Is that right? Oh my god, I can't find it. Anyway, I was watching this video about Dachau, Dachau. Anyway, it's where Nazis killed a bunch of Jews. And I was watching it. I never heard about this. I only heard about Auschwitz. And I was just reading about how, like, in the comments on this video, this guy was like, oh, me, like, my dad was, someone who had gone there and was part of the liberating army. And one time they were walking out in the Rockies, and he smelled a dead carcass of like an elk or whatever. And the dad had to turn around and go home. Like, he was like, I just brought everything back. It's like, and I look at it almost like, and I don't want to bring up like the PTSD part of it, but it's kind of like once you see something, there's no unseeing it, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to know exactly what to do and what action to take. I think with Mars in Cancer, though, your best, like, if anyone's ever played the red-black game before, you don't have to vote. Like, you can stop playing the game by not voting. I think with Mars in Cancer, like, just because, like, you can, if you're playing a slot machine and you lose money, you can just walk away. You don't have to put in more money to see if you can get it back, right? Just know when to stop, essentially. Know when to go within. Anyway, 15 minutes into Monday, we're moving on. We get to Tuesday. That moon is going to go oppo Uranus, and then it's going to go opposite Venus, then it's going to go opposite Mercury. And so this is where we're really going to get this kind of like, or actually, let me correct myself. The moon's going to square Saturn. Then it's going to go opposite Venus, Mercury. So we'll have this full moon in Scorpio, right? We see it. We're like, whoa, this is intense. Whoa, what's next? Whoa, what do I got to change? What do I got to heal? The moon's going to go opposite Uranus, shakes things up. Then the moon's going to square Saturn. Again, I think these Scorpio moon transits probably going to be the roughest moon transits that we get while Saturn's in Aquarius. But moon in Scorpio squaring Saturn is like it's very edgy. It's very going against the grain, because going against the grain is cool, and it's fuck everybody energy. It's very fuck everyone. It's punk, but in like the very like emo responsive way. And I think as the moon makes that square to Saturn, or later Monday, early into Tuesday, there's going to be kind of this like, okay, what can't do? Like the moon squaring Saturn, where do you need to stop, right? And this is also, the moon's full here, right? This is kind of like intervention moment. Like moon in Scorpio, full moon Scorpio is very much intervention moment. Everyone's calm and collected, the sun in Taurus around them, and then the full moon in Scorpio, it's hard to handle a lot of confrontation like that. But I think the moon going opposite Venus and then opposite Mercury on Tuesday really calls into question, like, again, this Mercury, Venus, and Taurus thing is really nice in the background. Like, sure, this is a really hostile intervention, but it's at like a really nice house, like in like Palm Springs or something. Like, it's calm, there's some, like, everyone's got really good energy, even though it's like this is also kind of like, I would look at this as like a rehab moment too. It's like really fucked up shit going on, really nice area. Like, for example, for people asking me if I'm from the IE, yes, I'm from the IE, but desert people and IE people, I don't know, like, I went to the mental hospital as a kid, and this is a little known fact that I think is just so funny. But in the middle of the Coachella Fairgrounds, there's a mental hospital. I don't know if you guys know that, but that almost reminds me of this moon in Scorpio opposite Venus and, Mercury and Taurus, where it's like, there's this craziness alongside with this like really nice, beautiful area. And what I look at with the moon in Scorpio going opposite Venus and Mercury is kind of like understanding what's valuable here. Like, hey, I was thinking about this earlier about John Mulaney. I'm sure a lot of you guys watch comedy, and I'm not the biggest John Mulaney fan, but I remember when he made an announcement about, he was like, I'm going to go to rehab, I'm like a coke addict and all that stuff, I'm going to get help. And there's a point too, what's cool when you hear people talk like that is like, you could really hear the acceptance in their voice of like, I have a problem, but I see the benefit in actually getting help, right? And I think this moon opposite moon and Scorpio opposite Mercury and Venus is like, you know what? Like, this is a shit situation, but this is I have the good thing. Mercury, I think I talked a little bit about this last week about Venus being also about what I think I talked about this in my Mercury retrograde video. I'm all confused with my videos, but Venus being somewhat of a form of, the intellect, right? There's a sort of, we can look at the sun and the Mercury as our mind and the intellect, but also Venus, right? Relationships. There's an order to that. It's a mental game at a lot of the times. But with Mercury and Venus conjoining each other in Taurus, there's this really clear, there's this like, hey, it's kind of like this is also, again, an extreme analogy. This is a confrontational, I almost said exorcism, intervention. And it's like, friends and family, they're like, hey, you have a problem, but we really want to help you, and we have the resources and tools to help you. That's what this is essentially. It's like confrontation issue, there's resources and tools. However, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink it. It's going to be up to you to drink the water on Tuesday, right? Like, you're really going to have to see what's in front of you, and understand that. And I think also too, with the moon in Scorpio, I talked a lot about this last year. What's worth holding on to and what's worth letting go of, right? When you go into the fall, it's the same thing. We're going into spring now. It's Taurus season. What I also think about the moon in Scorpio too is the sense of like fear and being like afraid. And when you're in Taurus season and Venus is in Taurus and things are growing again, there's like this, you're so used to scarcity that abundance scares you, right? You're like, it's people deal with money issues all the time, and especially like their relationship to money. And it's like scarcity is a big one of them. And it's like this full moon in Scorpio. It's like, people self-sabotage a lot, like, like when they get money because they're not used to it, or they don't feel like they they deserve it or anything like that. And then they can, it's a whole thing. That's also kind of like this. Like, this isn't going to be comfortable. Just don't expect to really be comfortable on Tuesday, but we're handling shit. It's getting handled. I think also on Tuesday, Moon opposite Mercury and Venus is kind of like really not only seeing this is the good, the bad, and the ugly, essentially. And this is really, when you talk to someone, like, have you guys ever bought a car on Craigslist? It's like, you can go, oh yeah, this is nice, but then you pitter patter, then you get to the real shit. You're like, okay, like, how many people have you murdered in this car? How many crimes have you done with it? That type of shit. Like, there's the friendly conversation, then there's the intense, deep stuff, and that's where this gets to. So Tuesday's kind of, it's not bad. I don't look at any of this as bad. I look at a lot of this as, though, unignorable. So when we go into Wednesday, the moon's going to make that square to Jupiter. So not bad. I think, again, the moon squaring Jupiter is going to be kind of like, people are trying to show you that there's a better option, but you're just being stubborn, right? Everyone's being stubborn. Not just you, we all are. So as the moon's in Scorpio making that square to Jupiter, it's like Jupiter in Aquarius is like, hey man, sometimes we all have bad days and you never really know when it's going to be. And, you kind of just have to be okay with that. And the moon in Scorpio is like, fuck you. Like, everyone's out to get me and you don't get it. And I don't know, moon in Scorpio can be very victim-y. But moon squaring Jupiter is definitely like, kind of like telling the helping hand to fuck off. But the moon's then going to go into Sagittarius and conjoin the South Node. Now, I used this analogy not that long ago too. Can't tell you what video I did it in. It could have been the Mercury retrograde video that I'm going to put out. It could have been last week's horoscope. But have you ever gotten very upset? Like this is a good analogy. It's Hot Rod. If you haven't watched Hot Rod with Andy Samberg, literally one of my favorite movies of all time. But when he is like yelling at his stepdad, he's like, I need to go to my happy place or my quiet place. And he like runs away to the forest to like smoke a cigarette. And then he goes into like the 80s dance montage thing. That's very like this full moon in Scorpio is like, there's a fight, there's a conflict, right? And then there's a running away. That's the moon in Sag. And also on this running away, the moon's going to be going towards the South Node the whole day. It's kind of like, have you ever gotten so upset and so angry and like you cry and it's just like, it's just draining, and then you gotta think about everything, and then you gotta reflect, and then, some people, I mean, sure, there's people that avoid, but I mean, everyone's kind of been through this. That's what Wednesday is really going to be like. It's like, you have a big confrontation, you have a big fight, and it's just kind of like, like, for me, I the only good example I can think of is I remember when my grandpa died. Oh my God, that was a big deal when that happened, because there was like this family drama and I couldn't see him over some crazy shit, and we were really close, and he died really unexpectedly, and I was really upset. There's a lot of like family beef with it, and I was very devastated by that, and I had this whole moment where I had to like literally just like leave, get out. I had a lot of moments like that because I have a lot of anger issues. But and there was just kind of this acceptance. I mean, especially with death too, you just have to accept it. Where you kind of go, okay, where do I move on from here though? And I think also with the South Node in Sag too, like again, I've been saying this since they've gone into Gemini and Sag. The North Node in Gemini is we are learning more. New information is coming in. We're understanding things differently. Things are being expressed and communicated differently now in a much more intenser version. And the South Node in Sag is like, dude, like being idealistic and, like you can have your dreams, you can see things in a big way, but like in order, you can't keep the big version that you had with this new information. You've got to change it. And I think this moon going into Sag, conjoining the South Node is really like, okay, where does our vision have to change? The moon is now decreasing in light. This is really exhausting. This literally looks like that tired you get after a good cry. Like it's literally the only way I can relate this. The moon's also, sure, it's going to sextile Saturn and Jupiter, But who cares about a sextile? The moon's in aversion to Mars. The moon's in aversion to all this stuff. So the moon's literally like kind of on its own in Sagittarius. The moon is taking a walk. Like I remember when I was an emo kid and I had a bunch of family issues and I was like smoking cigarettes when I was like 14. Like I would literally like get in all like family fights and then like I would just go and walk around and smoke a cigarette. This is very emo Cameron energy this day. So Wednesday. What do you got to change? How do you actually need to see things differently? We go into Thursday. Moon's going to make that sextile to Saturn. Square Neptune also. And Mercury's also going to sextile Neptune. So Thursday is also very reflective. The moon will be separating from the south node and sextiling Saturn. So there's this kind of like, okay, there's this... We're being rational again. We're coming back. It's kind of like, it's kind of like when you get like a scared puppy. Like if you guys ever had to like rescue a puppy or an animal and they're like really freaked out at first and then you wait an hour or two and then they're like, okay. They're like, okay, I'm used to you now. The moon sextiling Saturn, there's compromise. There is like, where can we build upon? Thursday's like, all right, let's there's some acceptance. Like there's this kind of like, okay, I guess I'm going to rehab. Like, here we go. What's that movie? What's that movie where he does coke right before he sends his brother to rehab? Oh, War Dogs, the Nicolas Cage movie where he gives his brother a bunch of coke right before he goes in rehab. Anyway, Mercury's also going to... the moon's also going to square Neptune too. And this is where it gets a little bit interesting because the moon's going to square Neptune while Mercury's sextiling Neptune. And so while the moon's in Sag squaring Neptune, trying to think of things... like, again, the moon's in Sagittarius is like... It's going to be easy to kind of want to avoid the subject, avoid the confrontation, want to go here, want to go there. Moon and Sag sextile Saturn is like you meet up with some other friends and they make it okay or whatever. But that moon square Neptune is like, don't get it twisted. Things aren't like dandy. You know what I mean? Like the moon square Neptune is like don't get it like, you're still here, just because you can avoid the issue, that doesn't mean the issue's gone. And I think that's where the moon Neptune square kind of gets into play on Thursday is kind of like, okay, like, you don't just avoid everything, but Mercury sextiling Neptune is also like, seeing what's valuable for one and then being able to kind of play upon that, right? Mercury in Taurus along with Venus at this point is like, okay, like I'm starting to see the picture here. What terms is Mercury in? Mercury's in Jupiter's terms here too. So Mercury's trying to think of a bigger way of seeing things. Mercury's in Taurus. So Mercury's about doing messages. Mercury's about communicating our ideas. It's doing it with Venus's tools. So that's going to be through, music, art, connection, fun, flirtatiousness. And so Mercury in Taurus is like, really trying to see the glass half full. And Mercury in Taurus is like, you know what? Like, hey, it's all good. Like, that's Mercury in Taurus. Mercury in Taurus is like, what I love about Taurus is that it's so stubborn that it's willing to choose peace. It's like, you know what? Fuck it. As long as I don't have to do anything, I don't care. So Mercury in Taurus is like, let's try to choose peace. Mercury's also in the terms of Jupiter too. So there's like, this higher ideal of it. But Mercury sextiling Neptune is kind of like, okay, like, starting to get a little bit idealistic with it. Just don't get out of reality. We go into Friday. Moon's going to go into Capricorn. Now, I don't know how I feel about this transit. I was looking at this and I feel like this is like, this is something. This is kind of interesting. Because we have this whole Spider-Man moment where Spider-Man meets Spider-Man and they're in each other's clothes, but they're both in fall. Or the moon's in detriment, Mars is in fall. So again, we keep getting these Moon-Mars aspects where they're both like not in fun positions and they're meeting up with each other. And when I was recording the first or second take of this, I kind of made this joke and I wanted to bring this back up. With the full moon in Scorpio, it's like missing missing the catch. The full moon, like the moon and Mars are like on the same team, and Mars is tossing the ball, or the moon's tossing the ball to Mars, and Mars misses it. So this is the same thing. This moon in Capricorn opposite Mars in Cancer is very like throwing the ball and not like it not being completed, like just or airballing it, right? Like there's this kind of like, what was that? The moon's going to go into Capricorn, where again, on the surface level, this is good for getting stuff done, detaching from your emotions, working through them, creating boundaries, compartmentalizing stuff too. But the moon's going to go opposite Mars, where, you're going to... the moon in Capricorn is like, if I show any emotion, I'm just going to react. Like, the moon, it's like when you have people... I don't even know. Like, I remember one time, all I have is stories for me. But when I was working at the Hard Rock on the Strip in Vegas, I had a group of guys grab my ass one time, and I went off on them. But it was very like I had to do things a certain way, otherwise like I was gonna very much lose my shit and get in a fight and lose my job and get in a lawsuit, and I didn't want all that. So I had to okay, I have to detach here, handle business, otherwise because I don't take that shit lightly, and I was very uncomfortable. But I look at this moon in Capricorn opposite Mars in Cancer as like if you don't get your shit together, you're gonna act out wildly. Like, moon in Capricorn is also like the moon in Capricorn is, again, I can't emphasize enough with Mars in Cancer. Don't act on emotional impulse. Like, it's okay to take your time. It's okay to think about it. Your best offense is a good defense, but this moon in Capricorn going opposite Mars is going to make you feel like you have to do something, and you don't have to always do anything. But the moon in Capricorn is like, again, in like that situation I brought up, I could have reacted, would have been totally fine too. A lot of people would have had my back on that. But I didn't, because I didn't want that issue. Because again, I'm pretty much a Taurus in the sense I want things to be easy. And I think with this moon in Capricorn opposite Mars in Cancer is very like, stick to the plan, stick to the fundamentals. If you're feeling out of your zone, moon's going to be in detriment. We're not going to be feeling too good. Mars is in Cancer. We're kind of crabby. It's okay to just kind of shut off. It's okay to just kind of, recluse a little bit. This is Taurus season. Do what's going to make you feel kind of grounded. And especially, this is the other thing that we have to talk about. This is one of the bigger highlights for this week, is the sun's going to be on Uranus on Friday. So, expect things to be kind of like shooken up. The Saturn Uranus thing, like that exact aspect already happened, but they're pretty much going to be squaring each other for the most part for the next year or two. Like, this isn't going away anytime soon. So this whole destabilization, decentralization, things being shooken up, don't get used to it, I guess. And I think with the sun conjoining Uranus, this is kind of like one of those moments where, the electric fence may or may not be turned on. There's only one way to find out. Got to touch it. So I think with this Mars in Cancer opposite moon in Capricorn business, though, is very maybe don't touch the electric fence. That's what I would say. It's okay to wait it out a little bit. But I would also say, too, with the sun conjoining Uranus, don't be afraid to do things differently. Don't be afraid to jump ship if you feel like the ship's going down. Don't be afraid, again, if you live in San Francisco and there's a 10.0 earthquake and your building's still up, but it's going to come down at some point, are you just going to sit inside and wait for it to come down? Or are you going to leave? This is kind of like one of those moments too, I think, with the sun conjoining Uranus. We move into Saturday. Moon is then going to trine Mercury and Venus. Great. This is kind of like The moon going opposite Mars is like, okay, I'm not sure what I need to do. But the moon applying to Venus, applying to Mercury is like, okay, but I'm starting to formulate a plan. Like I'm starting to put my priorities in check, and I'm starting to see what needs to be evaluated. I think starting this week with the full moon in Scorpio is going to really kind of shake us up. We're not going to expect that. It's going to kind of bring up stuff that we weren't necessarily looking at. But by the time we get to Saturday with this moon in Capricorn, trining Mercury and Venus, we're starting to get a plan together on how to go about all of this. And that Saturday is really not that big of a deal. I think Saturday is a really productive Saturday, if anything. But then we get into Sunday. That moon is also going to be pretty much applying to Mercury most of this day, and Venus. It's both. It's this whole weekend, really. The moon will apply to Mercury though, really in the morning, which is nice. So again, really making the plan, things making sense. Venus is sextiling Neptune. This is really good for enjoying things. It's like when you go to your favorite restaurant and you order your favorite dish and it comes out the exact way you wanted it to, and you're like, yes, this is what I wanted. I think the Venus Neptune, there's going to be a little sense of that, but Mercury is squaring Jupiter, and we're in May by now. If you haven't watched my May horoscopes, watch my May horoscopes. I talk like this is important. Watch my May horoscopes. Watch them. Mercury squaring Jupiter is kind of like, again, Mercury is in Taurus, where it's kind of stubborn. It's not really going to change its position. It's kind of comfortable where it's at. It's squaring Jupiter, where Jupiter in Aquarius is like all of the people being like, hey, billionaires, give us your money. And Mercury in Taurus is the billionaires being like, no. Like, it's kind of like, it's not a fight, but Mercury squaring Jupiter is, what you're saying is going to go against the grain of how someone else is seeing the situation. So it's not an easy conversation. It's not combative. It's not, it's not an argument, really. It's just having to explain like, for example, I'll never forget this. This is, in my opinion, one of the funniest things that ever happened to me as a kid. There was this girl who was like, she always said dumb shit, and it was like, you couldn't tell if it was like, okay, like, are you just like doing this for attention, or are you like kind of like dumb? And she, because this one time this is like sophomore year too. So this is sophomore year. We're in history class, and she said she thought Antarctica was pronounced Artantica. And she like thought that like the whole time, and everyone was like what? And like she genuinely didn't know though. Like we had to have a whole conversation. And it's kind of like, this is the Mercury square Jupiter. You're like, okay, that's so wrong, but let's change that. It's not, and it wasn't like she was being like, no, it's Artantica, like you're dumb. This isn't about a fight. This is just like a disagreement or something like that, or new information that kind of goes against what you initially believed. So, and that's kind of Sunday. This week is weird. This week only really has like one big transit, and that's the full moon in Scorpio. Sure, we get the Mercury and Venus sextiling Neptune and Mercury squaring Jupiter, but that's kind of besides the point. But I kind of think this full moon in Scorpio is kind of like, I think we're just going to kind of see things differently. Because once we go into next week, we're going to have Mercury enter Gemini. We're going to have Venus square Jupiter, and then Venus go into Gemini. And once Mercury and Venus goes into Gemini, now we're really sucked into pretty much once Mercury and Venus and both go into Gemini, from then until about, like, if we're going to put 2020 and 2021 into different chapters, there was the January, February time, all the Aquarius stuff. Then March and April was kind of like, here and there. And then we have May and June, which is really crazy. July has like the Mars-Venus conjunction that everyone's pretty much like obsessed with, rightfully. August is cool. And then it's like September builds up is really cool. October's cool. And then November is kind of weird. And it kind of has shitty turn, and then October's kind, and then December's like really wacky with the Venus retrograde. But anyway, like we had the January and February time where it was kind of like crazy, right? March and April, not a lot happened. May and June is absolutely crazy, and that all starts next week. And so I mean, so when you kind of this full moon in Scorpio can kind of kick it off in one way. I think this full moon in Scorpio is just full of landmines if you're not careful. Like if you're afraid of getting shot and you're gonna retreat, like, and you're just gonna run, you can also run into a landmine and blow up. So like if you're going to retreat, also don't just react and panic. Just know, I guess this week is just find out what happens. Cause see, this is what's so weird about being an astrologer is like it's just happening. There's nothing I could tell you to do or to not do. It's just going to happen. I just think the best advice I can give you is just be aware. Just be mindful. Like, fuck, how many people in this world just not even have zero self-awareness? How many people in the spiritual community don't even have self-awareness? Just have some self-awareness. Just look around and smell the roses. Don't panic. That's the big thing I can tell you this week is don't panic. Don't freak out. Life's nothing worth freaking out that much about. Do what you can. And also be preventative. That's the best way to look at it. And with that being said, again, another long weekly horoscope. I guess these are just getting longer and longer. Anyway, that's what I got for you guys. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for being here, liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you guys, and I'll be seeing you next week.